All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to our breakdown of today's essential news, all geared for your UPSC prep. So, what are we covering today? We'll be jumping into national politics. Then we'll look at internal security. After that, a big update on governance and the law. Then we'll check in on the economy, touch on the environment, and wrap it all up with some important news in brief. Okay, let's kick things off with what's probably the biggest political story of the day, the Bihar Assembly election results. Okay, so take a look at these numbers because they tell a really interesting story. You might notice the RJD actually got the highest vote share for a single party, 23%. But, and this is the key part, they only won 25 seats. The real story here is how efficient the NDA was. Just look at those strike rates from our sources. The BJP with a whopping 89.1% and the JDU at 83.2%. What does that mean? It means when they contested a seat, they almost always won it. That's how you turn votes into a landslide victory. So you're probably asking, how did the NDA manage such a decisive win? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of smart strategies. They made a direct appeal to women voters with a big financial aid scheme. And their coalition management was just spot on. They made sure votes transferred between their partners, which is crucial. Plus, a big push on welfare, like bumping up pensions, really helped. And don't forget Chirag Paswan's LJP-RV. They brought in 19 crucial seats. It really shows the power of a well-oiled alliance. Now, it wasn't just about Bihar. We had by-elections all over the country, and the results are pretty mixed. The Congress seems to be gaining some steam with wins in Rajasthan and Telangana. The BJP held its own in J&K and Odisha, but the real headline grabber for me, it's what happened in Kashmir's Budgam. The National Conference lost this stronghold to the PDP. Now, why is that a big deal? Because it's the first time that's happened since 1957. That could be a sign of a major political shift in the valley. All right, we're going to shift gears now, moving away from politics and into a very serious internal security situation that's unfolding. So this timeline really shows just how fast everything happened. A tragic car bomb blast on November 10th. And look, within just 2 days, it's officially declared a terror incident and the NIA takes over the case. What's also really significant is that just 4 days later, a major international trade fair went ahead as planned. That's a very clear message of defiance and resilience. So, as you can imagine, the response in Delhi has been massive. Security has been ramped up everywhere, and it's not just more police on the streets. It's a whole strategy. We're talking more CCTV, quick reaction teams, K9 squads, the whole 9 yards. But what's really interesting here is how they're bringing in the community. They're actually asking residents' welfare associations, the RWAs, to help verify tenants. It's like they're building this citywide neighborhood watch to support the official security forces. And at the same time this is happening, another blast, this one at a police station in Srinagar. It's just a stark reminder of the ongoing security challenges in Jammu and Kashmir, even as all eyes are on the investigation in Delhi. Okay, next up, let's talk about a huge development in the legal and governance space. This is a big one. The government has finally notified the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, the DPDP Act. You know, this has been in the works for years, ever since the Supreme Court declared privacy a fundamental right back in 2017. And what this law does, essentially, is rewrite the rulebook for how everyone, companies, the government, you name it, can collect and use our personal data. And this right here is where things get interesting. You've got two very different reactions to this new law. On one side, you've got the tech industry, folks like NASCOM. They're generally happy about the new clarity, but a little worried about some of the strict rules, like getting parental consent. But then on the other side, you have digital rights groups, like the Internet Freedom Foundation, and they're raising a huge red flag. They're saying, wait a minute, this law gives the government massive exemptions and control, which in their view could actually weaken the very privacy it's supposed to protect. All right, let's switch over to the economy. We've got some really important numbers on inflation to talk about. Wow, okay, this is a huge economic headline. Wholesale price inflation has actually dropped into negative territory, minus 1.21%. That's a 27-month low. So we're talking about deflation here, which means prices at the wholesale level are actually falling, mostly because of cheaper food and fuel. Now, why should you care? Well, for the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, this gives them a lot more breathing room. It could open the door for them to lower interest rates, which would make borrowing cheaper, and hopefully give the economy a nice boost. And while that's happening at home, India is also making some big moves on the global stage. Just look at this list of countries. India is pushing hard to sign free trade agreements, or FTAs, not just with the big players like the EU and the US, but with partners all over the world. This is a clear strategic play to diversify our trade, build stronger economic ties, and really boost exports in what's becoming a very competitive global market. Okay, now we're turning our attention to the environment, with two stories that have some really serious long-term consequences.
First up, there's a massive infrastructure project that's coming under some heavy fire for its environmental impact.
So what's really striking here is that the government itself has admitted to the National Green Tribunal just how big the ecological cost of this project is going to be. On one hand, you have this enormous 92,000 crore rupee strategic investment, but on the other, the acknowledged loss of coral reefs, the destruction of nesting grounds for the unique Nicobar megapod, and for the giant leatherback turtle. It really is the classic textbook case of development versus conservation.
And sticking with the environment but moving to Delhi, this chart shows some absolutely shocking data that came out of an RTI request. Just look at those two bars. The first one is the money Delhi's municipal corporation got from the central government over 5 years to fight air pollution. The second, much smaller bar, is how much they actually used. Just 17%. That massive gap between the money they had and the money they spent, well, it raises some pretty tough questions about the city's ability to tackle its toxic air crisis.
All right, to wrap things up, let's quickly run through a few other important stories from the day. First off, Gujarat's famous Ambaji white marble just got a Geographical Indication Tag, or GI tag. Now, this is a pretty big deal. A GI tag is like a legal seal of approval. It says that this marble's incredible quality and purity is directly because of where it comes from, and it protects its name so nobody else can copy it. And some sad news from the world of cinema. The veteran actor Kamini Kaushal has passed away at the age of 98. Her career started way back in 1946 with the film Nicha Nagar. She was a true pioneer, and she leaves behind an incredible legacy that shaped decades of Indian cinema. And finally, a really complex story coming out of Manipur. A tribal body has officially asked for the Any Kuki Tribes category to be removed from the scheduled tribes list. They're concerned that the category is so broad it's being misused by foreigners. This is a deeply sensitive issue that touches on identity, citizenship, and indigenous rights, and it can have major ripple effects in the state. So when we step back and look at all of today's news together, what do we see? We're left with some really big questions heading into the new year, aren't we? How are the election tactics we saw in Bihar going to shape national politics? Is this new data protection law actually going to protect our privacy, or will it give the state more control? And what are these ongoing security threats from Delhi to Srinagar telling us about the challenges ahead? You know, the key takeaway here isn't just knowing the facts of the day. It's about spotting the trends these events are setting in motion. And that's our deep dive for November 15th.